Today on Government Matters, the long path ahead to the Navy's 355-ship fleet. The Chief of Naval Operations explains the budget battles he's preparing for. 3 dimensions to building the fleet the Navy and the nation needs. My exclusive conversation with Admiral Michael Gilday. And Capitol Hill power brokers and their Navy vision. Congressman Joe Courtney and Rob Whitman of the House Armed Services Sea Power Subcommittee. Government Matters starts right now.
From Washington, D.C. and around the world, this is Government Matters with Francis Rose.
Thanks for watching the weekend edition of Government Matters, the only show covering the latest news, trends, and topics that matter to the business of government. I'm your host, Francis Rose. The Navy's fleet of just more than 290 ships won't grow to its 355-ship goal without a big influx of money from Congress. That was the message from the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Michael Gilday, to Congress this budget season. In my exclusive conversation with him at the Navy League Sea Airspace 2021 virtual preview, Admiral Gilday told me how he made his argument to the Hill.
I really talked about the need to make strategic investments in 3 key areas. One of them was the Columbia-class SSBN. We need to deliver that platform on time before the end of the decade in 2028. The second area was investment in our shipyards. This is a once-in-a-century investment that we need to make in order to maintain many of the submarines that we're building today. And then lastly, strategic sea lift is another area that I feel that we've underinvested in for a number of years, and we had to focus investments in that area as well. So those are 3 key strategic areas that we were focused on. And then we also had to balance the budget across 3 big bins. The first is readiness and training. So think the fleet in the near and the midterm, and then in modernization. So that's keeping pace with or leading, actually trying to stay ahead of our adversaries in terms of capabilities on our existing fleet, and then building capacity. And so really trying to balance across those 3 bins. And it becomes kind of tricky because it's difficult to keep an absolute balance, or it's difficult to keep an even balance across all 3 of those. But I tended to prioritize current readiness in training over the 3.
I want to talk about each of those 3 in turn and some of the platforms that you mentioned. In particular, though, a lot of questions about the size of the fleet. The shipbuilding plan that you released recently calls for anywhere from 320 to 370 manned ships. That kind of made the target of 355 a little more fuzzy in the minds of a lot of people. Is that a fair representation, do you think, of the intent of the shipbuilding plan, Admiral?
I think the shipbuilding plan I think the intent was to present a range. 355 kind of falls smack in the middle, and of course, that's the law. And I still think that 355 is a good target. But, you know, the reality is that we can't really afford to have a Navy bigger than one that we can sustain given the resources that we receive. And so based on our current budget, I believe the analysis shows that we can afford a fleet of about 300 ships. So that includes the manning, the training, the equipping, the supply parts, the ammunition, the training days, the flying hours, all of that yields a fleet that's ready to go to sea today and deter a China, deter a Russia from any malign activity. I hope I got at your point there, sir.
Yes, sir. What's the path then in the time that you have remaining as CNO? And I'm not casting aspersions on the amount of time that may be, but what is the path to move the Navy toward the 355-ship goal at the time that the law calls for it to be?
I think it's going to be a challenge if our top line stays the same, or if it decreases. If it decreases, I think that we're going to see a declining fleet in terms of capacity. And so if we take a look at the fact that 60% of our budget is for manpower, for operations, and for maintenance, and that those costs are increasing on an annual basis at about almost 2.5% above inflation, that's going to eat away at our ability to grow capacity that'll ever approach above 300 ships based on how we're funded right now.
The prognosis for inflation too moving forward is not very good. There are many experts that think that will go up in out years, and I'll take that up with the budget nerds rather than discussing that with you, Admiral. But the path to getting to 355 includes, in some cases, adding different platforms through modernization. One of the things that came up on a number of occasions in the hearings that we mentioned at the beginning of this conversation was platforms that you want to divest, legacy systems that you want to cut or eliminate. What's the state of those, and what is the case that you made to Congress for getting rid of some of those programs that maybe some of those members wanted to keep?
So the most controversial are the cruisers, and so there are 7 proposed decommissionings in the FY22 budget. And the argument that I made really fell across 3 areas. The first for the cruisers was the cost to own and operate, which for those 7 ships is about $5 billion over the 5-year defense plan. The second is reliability. And so these ships on average right now are 32 years old. We are seeing cracks, and we are seeing challenges in the material conditions of these ships that are, to a certain degree, unpredictable. So they're unknown unknowns. When we try to deploy a ship most recently and had to bring it back twice because of fuel tank cracks is an example of something we just couldn't predict, but that we have to react to, and it does have an impact on reliability. And we need to be able to provide the Secretary of Defense and the President reliable assets out there that they can count on to do the nation's business. And the third is lethality. And so some of these cruisers have the Spy-1A radar, which is an analog system. Others are early Spy-1Bs. They're approaching obsolescence, number one. And number two, they have difficulty actually seeing the threat based on the speed, and the profiles that we see threat missiles flying at these days. And so those 3 factors really came into play from a realistic standpoint in terms of making the argument to divest of those cruisers.
Admiral Michael Gilday at the virtual preview to the Navy League Sea Airspace 2021. Coming next, more of my exclusive conversation with the Chief of Naval Operations. Straight ahead on Government Matters, the 3 buckets the Navy needs to fill to be ready to fight tonight all over the world. You're watching 7 News. Welcome back. The Chief of Naval Operations is preparing a 3-dimensional approach to delivering the capability he and Congress expect the Navy to deliver. In my exclusive conversation with him at the Navy League Sea Airspace 2021 virtual preview, the CNO, Admiral Michael Gilday, told me those 3 dimensions and the timeline he's pursuing to deliver them.
Under the sea, on the sea, and in the air. Under the sea, all of our Virginia-class Block 3s and Block 4s should be delivered by 2025 with an undersea weapon that has that's more lethal and has greater range. On the sea, we'll be just at the cusp of delivering our first Constellation-class frigate. We'll be delivering the DDG Flight 3s in earnest, and we are investing in a longer-range weapon, the Maritime Strike Tomahawk, which gives us range and speed to reach out and touch an adversary. And then lastly, by 2025, we believe, if we stay on path, that we'll be delivering the Zumwalt-class destroyers with a hypersonic missile capability. In the air, we'll have half of our air wings will have a 4th and 5th generation mix, which analysis has shown to be quite effective against our adversaries. Tied in with that is a longer range air-to-surface missile. It gives us greater reach and greater punch. And along with that, our P-8s, our new increment of P-8s are investing as well to upgrade. All of that's coming into play by 2025. And so we do have an investment strategy that incrementally gets us to a more capable, a more lethal fleet, but not necessarily a bigger fleet unless we saw a a rise in the top line.
A number of observers, and I include myself in this cohort, Admiral, talk about the 355 number and maybe don't spend as much time as we should talking about the capability of the fleet, that the fleet can deliver at that number. What's the delta between the capability that the fleet can deliver today and the capability that you envision a 355 ship or somewhere on that landscape of what the shipbuilding plan has proposed, 320 some to 370 some? What's the capability that that fleet will deliver that maybe we don't have today, sir?
Yes. So in terms of numbers, it really gets down to how we intend to fight. So for about the last 6 years, the Navy and the Marine Corps have been working on a joint, on the distributed maritime operations concept, which I would argue is a joint concept and really is the Navy and Marine Corps' contribution to the joint warfighting concept that essentially synchronizes the joint force together as one large fighting element. With respect to distributed maritime operations, the way we expect to fight in the future is to come at an adversary across multiple vectors and multiple domains. So not only on, above, and under the sea, but also space and cyber. If I tie in the Marine Corps from, let's say, islands in the Pacific with a lethal capability that they can also contribute to sea control and sea denial, it gives you quite a multi-pronged approach to an adversary. But in order to exercise that concept as we have envisioned it, we need numbers. We need numbers to be able to distribute the fleet across a very big area in the Pacific. And so that's part of the challenge. Now, with respect to the analysis that we've done that's informed the fleet that we are investing in or the capabilities that we're investing in, one of the things that the analysis, the Future Naval Force Study Assessment provided us was much better insights based on how we're going to fight. It gave us better indications of what we need to fight with. And so the capabilities and the platforms that we need to both deter and win. And so when you take a look at the composition of the fleet, it's heavily reliant, as an example, on submarines. And right now, our shipbuilding budget, 48% of it is dedicated to undersea warfare and new submarines in the Virginia and Columbia class. But also with respect to aircraft carriers, the world's or the U.S.'s most survivable airfields or aircraft carriers. And so I talked earlier about the 4th and 5th gen mix with longer range weapons associated with that. So the analysis really gave us a sense beyond the numbers what the composition of the fleet needs to be in order to effectively deter and fight. And that really comes down to capabilities, joint capabilities that the Navy would contribute to a joint fight.
I'd like to move to some of the platforms individually now, if I might, Chief. You mentioned the frigate program, the destroyer program, and just a moment ago, the carrier program. A successful shock test for the carrier, for the new carrier recently. What did you learn from that test, and how do you think that projects to the carriers that will come behind it, sir?
So it's the first in a series of 3 shock tests that we're doing with the Ford as the first in the class. The first one, the ship did not sustain any appreciable damage from that first shock test, which was quite a large explosive charge. We'll increase the intensity of the testing here over the course of the next month in 2 more shock trials. Having served on a ship that was damaged by 2 mines, this was years ago during Desert Storm, I understand the impact and the value of those shock tests and understanding the survivability of our platform.
Admiral Michael Gilday at the Navy League's Sea Airspace 2021 virtual preview. You can learn more about Sea Airspace 2021 at National Harbor, August 2nd through 4th at govmatters.tv/events. Coming next, 2 of the congressional power brokers the CNO has to convince. Straight ahead on Government Matters, the chair and ranking member of the Sea Power Subcommittee on the House Armed Services Committee. You're watching 7 News. Welcome back. The Chief of Naval Operations told you about the plans he wants Congress to support to build out his fleet and its capabilities. Two of the power brokers in Congress he has to convince, though, want more detail than they've gotten so far. Congressman Joe Courtney of Connecticut's chairman of the House Armed Services Sea Power Subcommittee. Rob Whitman of Virginia is the ranking member. In my exclusive conversation with him at the Navy League's Sea Airspace 2021 virtual preview, Congressman Courtney explained what he'd like to see from the Navy that's missing right now.
When you're dealing with a new administration who, again, was a little late bringing over the budget, it's not uncommon that it's not accompanied by some of the multi-year documents that I think both Mr. Whitman and I, having done this for a while, are convinced are really important, whether it's a 5-year fit-up or a 30-year shipbuilding plan. There is no fit-up, and in fairness to the Biden administration, that was the case with the prior administration and the administration before the Trump administration, really going all the way back to Bush, that the incoming team, kind of reserves the right to present a fit-up on the second budget year. Nonetheless, that's still kind of frustrating because, when you're trying to figure out a spending plan and an authorization plan, it would be nice to have a little bit of visibility out further into the future. The purported document called a 30-year shipbuilding plan, in all honesty, I see it really as the 1-year budget plus sort of ranges of ships in the future, which is not, in my opinion, really what the law contemplated, that Congress passed for a 30-year shipbuilding plan. So I think, there's obviously some signals included in that document about fleet architecture and where I think priorities are going to be in terms of different platforms. But it's still, frankly, does not have the precision that I would prefer personally. And as a result, I think the subcommittee is doing a lot of follow-up questions, both at the staff level and member level, to really press the Navy to explain, what is the thinking behind cutting a destroyer in the president's budget, given, the aging out of the cruisers, which again is still an issue that we're trying to resolve, but certainly in terms of the cruisers, radars and air defense command systems that I think new destroyers will actually fill that role. So again, I'm really lucky to have a great partner like Rob Whitman. We've worked together for a long time. We've got staff that also is extremely stable and experienced, has lots of institutional knowledge. And I think, as we, the last few years, we're going to be really using our own best judgment in terms of trying to put together a balanced plan in a, as I said, in a transition year, which is the way I would really describe it in terms of, the leadership, which is still acting at the Department of Navy, and a new team that's over at the SecDef's office that we're basically communicating with. So I'll stop there and yield to my friend.
Congressman Whitman, welcome. It's good to talk to you again. What do you see in the shipbuilding plan and some of the other documents the Navy's presented? Similar things, similar takeaways for you to your colleague?
Well, first of all, Francis, thank you for emceeing this, and thank you to the Navy League and to Sea Airspace. What a great opportunity, as the chairman said, to get back together. And I want to really thank my colleague and chairman of the subcommittee, Joe Courtney, for his tremendous work. If you look at the 30-year shipbuilding plan, I believe that there are a number of shortcomings there. Title 10, Section 231 is very specific about what should be in a shipbuilding plan. This plan is not that. It lacks the details necessary to really determine where we are going. It is critical that we modernize the Navy. The things that are very concerning about this plan is the lack of specificity about how we get to the statutory requirement of 355 ships, and the Future Naval Force Structure Assessment previously said we ought to be on track to about 400 ships by 2038. This plan does not get us there. And much of what goes on, as the chairman pointed out, happens outside the future years defense plan, better known as the fit-up. So I always argue that, all of our dreams as far as the Navy that we need come true outside the fit-up, which is not a realistic pathway to be able to get there. The thing that concerns me about this is not just the ships that it doesn't build, but the ships that it retires while not having a plan to build complementary ships. If you look at it, it retires 11 cruisers. That's 1,200 vertical launch system missile tubes. That's an incredible amount of capacity we lose there. 8 LSDs. The Commandant has said that the floor for the Marine Corps is 31 amphibious ships. This plan says 24 to 28, which is, in the Commandant's words, unacceptable risk. The challenge going forward, too, is what are we doing with other platforms? It is not putting us on the proper path as far as building surface ships like the destroyers, as the chairman pointed out. Also making sure, too, that there's the right pathway to sustainment. And that is not just building the ships, but also making sure that we have the ship maintenance capability.
Congressman Rob Whitman along with Congressman Joe Courtney at the virtual preview of the Navy League Sea Airspace 2021. You can learn more about the in-person conference at National Harbor August 2nd through 4th at govmatters.tv/events. And all of my conversations are archived at govmatters.tv. You get a preview and a recap of every show when you sign up for our daily newsletters. Just enter your email in the red box on the website. I'm back in 2 minutes. That's the latest from Washington. Join me weeknights at 8 and 11 on WJLA 24/7 News and next Sunday morning at 10:30 on 7 News to stay plugged in on issues that matter to the business of government. Thanks for watching. I'm Francis Rose.